Well, hello, guys. You're listening to Beauty Bites with Dr. K, Secrets of a Plastic Surgeon. And today on the podcast, it's time to talk all about skin cancers and taking care of your skin. And I'm chatting today with Dr. Jennifer Herrmann, who's a board-certified, fellowship-trained dermatologist and dermatologic surgeon right here in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. She's a graduate of both Princeton and Harvard, and she trained at University of Alabama. And she is working now right here in LA on Rodeo Drive near me. And we're chatting today all about skin. And I thought we'd chat, Jennifer, about skin cancer prevention, sun damage, and the dangers of indoor tanning. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here, and I'm happy to offer any advice and tips.
So I know that Skin Cancer Awareness Month was in May, but due to COVID, that completely got glossed over. We were so obsessed with like every little thing we can do to prevent getting sick and getting ill and dying from COVID. We talked a little bit about sun exposure and vitamin D and how that was actually a preventative important thing for COVID prevention. Let's chat a little. What are your thoughts about how much vitamin D we need and how sun exposure is essential, but in small, proper doses? Oh, did your audio glitch there? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I think your audio glitched a little. I can say that sentence one more time.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, it's okay. That's okay. Sometimes the internet might go in and out, and I don't know why that would be happening, but we'll keep going. So I'll ask you that one more time. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, okay. All right. So last month, May, was Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and we were all so embroiled in all the COVID news and publicity that I think that got completely overwhelmed. So I think it'd be fun and important to tell people again the importance of skin cancer and sun avoidance and how to prevent it. So what are your thoughts on how we should be exposing ourselves to just the right amount of sun to get vitamin D and not too much sun to get sun damage and skin cancer?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And it's an important question because I think there's a lot of benefits of vitamin D. I think you can certainly take a supplement, a vitamin D supplement. I actually take a vitamin D supplement myself because I'm pretty strict about sun exposure because we absolutely know that UV radiation damages the DNA in skin cells, and that over time both leads to aging as well as pre and skin cancers. So, really protecting that skin's DNA is critical, and sun protection is the foundation of that. I think, there's so much, kind of common knowledge about, okay, sunscreens, hats, chapsticks with SPF, all these things are important, but there's a lot more than just that you can do. I think one of the key things is nutrition. And yes, vitamin D is important because it's an antioxidant. It can help improve immunity. But it's also really important to maximize foods high in antioxidants. These are brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Avoid grilling in excess heat because they can degrade some of these vitamins and antioxidants. And they also cause, heat can cause harmful byproducts, which can age and damage the skin. So it's really important to have, a good intake of antioxidants because that can help with DNA repair as well as help the skin stay healthy. It's also important to minimize your intake of highly refined sugars, trans fats, and processed meats. All of these can increase inflammation and damage collagen and skin and again, the DNA. And one thing that's not always attractive to patients, but can be helpful for kind of aging and keeping the skin younger and healthier is intermittent fasting. When you fast...
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
It's really hard, but what it does is it places your body in kind of a survival mode or a conservation mode, and this naturally activates a lot of repair pathways. So you're able to kind of reset things. And good DNA repair is really essential for keeping skin healthy and doing the functions that it's supposed to do. If DNA damage accumulates, then we start seeing signs of age, and ultimately that leads to pre and skin cancers. So protecting the DNA is critically important, and nutrition is a big one to help you do that. And another thing that you can do kind of outside of the whole, sun protection, sunscreen, sun shirts, all of that, is to use DNA repair enzymes themselves. So we naturally in the skin have these enzymes that help with DNA repair, help keep the integrity of the skin healthy. But over time, we start to lose these. At about age 30, they start to decline, and then suddenly we need more of them as we age. And so if you use a topical lotion or cream that has these enzymes in it, you can actually put them back in the skin. And so you can help repair. So one of my favorite sunscreens, actually, it's a newer product by Cellular MD. It's got these DNA repair enzymes built into the sunscreen. So you're actually repairing as well as protecting, which is awesome, because you're getting kind of the best of both worlds. And I think of it as a smarter sunscreen. So, nutrition is important.
So cool. Yeah. And antioxidants, I totally agree with. And then I love the idea of intermittent fasting, boosting some of your DNA repair enzymes too. Like inexpensive thing to do, just don't eat. Just limited time windows of eating, actually. And people think you have to starve and fast all day, but you don't. You can actually choose your time block and then eat within that time block. That's so effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's really interesting research on just aging in general. And I always think of aging and skin cancer kind of on a continuum, because as you start aging, more damage accumulates, and then, you start seeing the pre and skin cancers. But, I think it's really interesting to see all these studies that have been done on mice and other animals where intermittent fasting has really increased longevity. Really because we're thinking it's helping on the DNA repair front. It's kind of allowing your body to kind of reset so that genetic code is read correctly, so your cells can function like they should. So the skin is no different. I think the intermittent fasting, it helps all of your organs, including your skin, which is your biggest organ. So I think it
really helps with actually visceral fat too, which is so important, because we look at fat like it's
no way to get rid of that.
It's not just the inches you can pinch. It's actually the most important fat to get rid of is your visceral fat that surrounds your internal organs. And like, there's no other way to melt that other than calorie restriction, which forces you to burn internal fats. But the other day I saw a patient who was sitting in my chair, and he had just gotten so tan. I thought he was out in the sun. He was like, no, I just went to a tanning booth and I just about had a heart attack because he's like, can I go to the tanning booth tomorrow after fillers? And I was like, yeah, if you want to like just shoot me already, because that's so horrible. And for $16, we got 2 sessions of indoor tanning and a lifetime of cancer. So tell me and tell everybody, like, how bad is 1 session of indoor tanning in a tanning booth?
Well, it's interesting because actually when I was a resident, I did a lot of legislation and lobbying, against the indoor tanning industry, and tried to get legislation passed in states to limit, the ability of children to get into tanning beds, because a lot of states don't have regulations, and kids can get in, and it just is so harmful. A lot of people think that they're, quote, safer and smarter because it's more of a controlled time. It's set for a certain time limit. There's
you're getting a base tan. That's what I keep
so many problems with that. First, the actual UV that comes out of a tanning bed is UVA. So when you're talking about the vitamin D argument, that's actually UVB that's important for stimulating that, not UVA. So it's not even really a logical argument to use that it's helping to stimulate vitamin D. It also, some of the bulbs themselves, it's much higher intensity than what actually comes from the sun at noonday sun. So it's extraordinarily concentrated, and that absolutely goes in and damages again that DNA. So it's extraordinarily harmful. There's definitely studies supporting that tanning bed use is linked to increased rates of melanoma, which is the most dangerous type of skin cancer. It's really so harmful. And if you want to get extra vitamin D, you can get that through supplementation. If you want to get the quote base tan, which we'll talk about in a second, A lot of the spray tans are really good now. And a lot of these things, though, the wipes and topicals that you can buy over the counter are much more natural. They don't have that orange tint. They actually look very natural on. Sometimes even when patients come in, it's hard to tell that they've used a self-tanner. Usually you can tell on the hands and feet, but they're
Yeah.
really much more natural looking. And it's in that is a very superficial reaction on the skin. It's kind of the ingredient in there interacts with the dead layer of the skin called the stratum corneum. So it's really not harmful. Maybe it causes a tiny bit of oxidative stress, but in general, it's much, much, much safer than going into a tanning bed. The base tan that everyone thinks is, quote, the healthy tan. So it's a total oxymoron. There's nothing, there's no truth in terms of a healthy tan. It's really, so it's a tan is really your body's, it's a sign that your body's defense mechanisms are at work. So
Right.
your skin is smart. It senses that DNA damage from the UV, and it activates the melanocytes, which are the pigment causing cells, to make more melanin. That disperses, that pigment called melanin disperses in the skin. It
Mhm.
covers and shields the DNA to try to protect it. So think of it as, a tan is this umbrella of pigment that's trying to protect your skin cells' DNA. So it's really a sign that your body is trying to defend itself. And there's nothing healthy about that. It's a defense mechanism, and it's a sign that you're being damaged and your body is trying to survive.
So true or false? So indoor tanning is good for getting a base tan. False.
No, false.
Absolutely false. And true or false, having a tan at all, is that good at all, or there's no benefit?
It's another good question. And, people that have chronic sun exposure and they do create that kind of shield over time, that can maybe give them some internal protection, just like, patients who have a slightly darker skin tone, they have more baseline protection than someone who has very light skin. The problem is a base tan gives you an SPF of about 3. So that's the equivalent of wearing a wet white t-shirt at the beach. And everyone knows who's wearing a wet white t-shirt at the beach that the UV goes right through that and you can still get burned.
Right.
It also gives patients this false sense of security that, oh, they've got this tan so they can go out and they get more sun exposure and feel like they're protected. And so they often don't use as much sunscreen or try to be as, take precautions. And they end up with, additional sunburn on top of the tan.
Mhm.
So it's, there's really nothing good about a base tan.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And what
you
is
think.
the incidence of increased skin cancer lifetime risk? Do you remember kind of some of those statistics? Like, I know I remember reading in med school and residency about, 1 or 2 blistering sunburns and how they increase your lifetime skin cancer risk by so much. So if you've had a blistering sunburn, do you remember
It,
what those are?
it's really hard to pinpoint actual numbers in this type of thing. I know there's one study, that showed increased tanning specifically. Patients had an increased skin melanoma risk of 75%, which is quite high. It's a much higher increased risk. I think it's really hard to do accurate studies in terms of looking at those numbers. And honestly, I haven't looked at it, in the
Yeah.
last couple years to know what the latest is. But, it's definitely, a preventable thing. It's like smoking. We know better. It took 100 years for us to get legislation to pass some of these things, to prohibit, and put regulations, especially for minors to
Right.
smoke. Not all states have come, not all states are like California where there's a ban under 18. And so there's more work that definitely needs to be done on that front.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's, it definitely increases the risk of skin cancer, just as, burns outside do. A lot of it, though, in addition to sun exposure, is genetics. I think, some ethnicities have higher rates of skin cancer. And it's, yes, it's because they don't have as much baseline protection, but also I think there's differences biologically in people's ability to repair the DNA damage. So, some populations probably have increased capacity to repair DNA while others, have less capacity. So I think that's also, something important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are the newest innovations coming out in skincare this year? Like anything popular or trending? Like last year seemed to be all about hyaluronic acid in every single product. And
Yeah, there's a lot, and I think, for 2020 specifically, I think again this, COVID has been on everyone's mind. So I do have a lot of patients, really looking to try to optimize their skin health. So yes, rather than thinking of just the near term, patients are more interested in doing things that are going to help prevent aging and keep their skin healthier over the long term. So, again, this kind of comes back to what can we do to prevent aging, and eventually skin cancer, but that's kind of going back to focusing on nutrition, supplements that are smarter. There is a supplement that can specifically help to prevent skin cancer now. It's called Nicotinamide, or niacinamide. It's a form of vitamin B3. And great studies that have come out to show that that helps reduce your risk of skin cancer. Other preventative things are sleep hygiene. Again, give yourself that time to repair. Exercise is another one. It helps decrease stress, decrease inflammation, helps even build collagen and elastin. Mindfulness is a big one. That's another thing that, just resetting and kind of, decreasing some of that baseline stress can be enormously helpful in terms of keeping your skin healthy. And then, adjusting hormones sometimes themselves can be helpful to help, patients keep the skin younger and healthier. So one trend I think is really kind of this more holistic look and really what can I do to prevent aging for the longer term rather than just focusing on, okay, treatment A or B in the near term. So I think it's kind of looking at the horizon and looking more broadly. And then I think a second trend is really the use of increased use of artificial intelligence. So I think we're going to see a lot of new devices that use AI, that, use sensors and they detect tissue temperatures in the skin and can really target different areas specifically and much more precisely than we could before. There's also a lot of software systems that use algorithms of millions of images to help aid in the diagnosis of skin conditions. And I think when these are used with a dermatologist's experience, the combination, I think, will lead to improved and faster diagnoses for patients, especially where there's limited access to dermatology in some of these areas that are a bit more rural and there aren't dermatologists practicing. So I think, artificial intelligence is going to be big, and, as more comes out, we're going to have, more targeted, more efficient, more precise treatments that we can offer that are minimally invasive. And then of course,
talk a little bit about like, in terms of aging for the long haul, what can women do in terms of menopausal hormone changes attacking their skin and how to prevent that? Because that's something every woman over 50, their collagen goes down by, 50% or crazy amounts within 5 years after perimenopause onset. So are there things we should be doing?
There's a lot of things that I think we can do. I think especially as estrogen decreases, we really start seeing that in the skin. The skin, loses water, so it dries out. It becomes thinner. The elastin starts to kind of fall apart more. And certainly you can directly address it by doing bioidentical hormones. Those are meant to kind of reset and adjust hormones to get it a little bit more back to when you were a bit younger. Those really require a thoughtful discussion, with a dermatologist or another, physician who's overseeing it, to kind of weigh risks and benefits. But there's thinking that bioidenticals, are a bit safer than traditional hormones. I think, in terms of, the collagen aspect, I do a lot of treatments with laser and skin tightening. So, ablative lasers that can cause,
Is there something beeping in your background? Because it's been like 2 or 3 times. Is that something kitchen side door? Is that like your home alarm thing? Do you have like one of those home door things that chimes when the door opens? Sorry.
The neighbors do. I actually didn't hear that from mine.
Oh, really? I hear beep, beep, side something, kitchen, side door. But
okay.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll edit it out, but maybe start that sentence one more time. Sorry.
Sure. So Oh, we were talking about hormones, I guess.
Hormones and estrogens going down and transepidermal water loss.
Yeah, so, as we age and as estrogen goes down specifically, we definitely lose integrity of the skin. So we lose elastin, we lose collagen, there's more water loss, so the skin dries out. So one way to kind of deal with that is to do it directly through adjustments in hormones. And, there's a lot of evidence that bioidentical hormones can make these small adjustments and can help revert things back to a little bit of a younger time. So the skin is more plump, it has more elastin, it's younger and more youthful. So you definitely can adjust hormones themselves. But there's other things that you can do too to stimulate collagen synthesis. In my office, we do a ton with laser resurfacing. And some of the ablative lasers, they form tiny little microscopic wounds in the skin, and that stimulates collagen synthesis. And these treatments are great because you are growing your own collagen and you are regenerating and thickening up the skin without using products to do it. So it's a very natural way to smooth lines and wrinkles, especially in those who have a lot of sun damage, where there's pigmentation problems and a lot of fine lines. So there's absolutely ways to stimulate that collagen synthesis and kind of reset the skin to a younger time. Tightening devices can do that too. They use heat that can often stimulate collagen synthesis. So there's really a lot of things that you can do in combination to kind of try to reset that skin to a younger time. And I think, when I look at my patients who do the best with these procedures, it's really the ones who are also taking care of themselves from the inside out. So it's patients who are looking at their nutrition and doing other preventative things to really, make sure that they maintain, results as long as they can, and set themselves up for just, overall health going forward.
Definitely. Have you seen more young people requiring Mohs surgery and skin cancer excisions? I think in my
Yeah.
own practice, I see that where people, ethnicities like Hispanic people, young people tend to think that they're immune because they have pigmentation. But I'm seeing more and more patients who are Hispanic with skin cancers or darker skin tones getting skin cancers.
Yeah, it's really true. And I think, part of it is just lifestyle. People are outdoors more, and I think there is a myth that does need to be busted, that darker skin is the, total protection. Bob Marley, who obviously had very dark skin, he actually died of melanoma. That
Bob
was a skin
Marley, I
cancer
didn't
that
know that.
yeah,
Really?
it was on his toe. In darker skin, we see skin cancers in all types, and I will say I have seen it in younger patients, and I think with increasing frequency. I had a patient just today who is in her early 30s, who had a recurrent skin cancer. It had been treated elsewhere, probably 2 years ago. And it didn't look like much before I did the biopsy, but it was there. She had noticed a change and it absolutely had recurred from that. So she even had it younger than that. The youngest patients I've seen are teenagers, and it's often more of an environmental exposure. Sure, there's a few genetic conditions that can, predispose you, that have problems with DNA repair typically. But I think a lot of people are, have more active lifestyles outdoors. And they're just getting more sun exposure, and despite the increasing evidence of the dangers of UV and harmfulness to the skin specifically, we're not doing a great job in terms of educating people about just how important it is to protect, especially when you're younger.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about pigmentation. I think that that is like 30% of women suffer from melasma, hyperpigmentation. Are you doing anything innovative or new in your practice with like glutathione or tranexamic acid? And can you tell patients, like listeners, what that's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't do the glutathione, just because I think there's some safety questions there. But for melasma, I always tell patients it's really you're in this for the long haul, and you have to be patient. And usually it requires a combination of treatments. So I don't go at it single-handedly with just a bleaching agent, for instance, a topical cream. Usually we combine that. I've had great success with our picosecond laser. So the problem with most treatments for melasma is that heat absolutely aggravates it and worsens the condition. And most all of our lasers are based on heat because they heat up a target, and that's how we get rid of it. So the picosecond laser, it delivers energy so quickly in a picosecond that there's almost no time to generate any heat. So for melasma patients, it's actually much safer. So doing a series of very light treatments with picosecond laser, while doing usually a little higher percentage of hydroquinone or a non-hydroquinone type bleaching agent, as well as tranexamic acid for some patients, really that combination can do a good job. Also
Are
thinking
you
about,
using tranexamic acid injected intralesionally, or are you using it
not
topically or
intralectally,
orally?
I'm using it orally.
Orally. So you
Yeah.
can take these pills of
Mhm.
tranexamic acid, which normally is like a product used for hypercoagulability, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
But we use slightly lower doses, and we don't, if we understood the biology of melasma better, I think we would have better treatments for it. Because we don't perfectly understand it, I think that's, one thing that makes it challenging to treat.
Yeah. But
When
I
we,
think you're absolutely right. Like, it's crazy how many people think that they just need one really intense laser to solve
well,
all their problems. And like, that is the one thing that you don't need, because it's going to
exactly.
pigment you.
And
And
I've seen patients come in who've tried everything. They've had peel after laser, and it's just gotten worse and worse. And I'm like, okay, we need to stop. We need to reset. And you really have to, less is more when it comes to melasma. The second you think you can add more energy, the second it backfires. So it's really having an honest conversation with the patients about pigmentation. If you can, stop a birth control pill, that's often a trigger for some. So it's a combination of genetics and UV exposure, and we do everything to try to optimize the protection from UV, but it's sometimes not enough when there's a strong genetic component. So kind of coming up with a thoughtful combination of kind of minimally invasive non-heat based treatments is usually the most effective.
yeah, it really does boil down to a long-term consistent regimen. And I even tell patients, like, having melasma is like having diabetes. You're just going to have to maintain it forever and ever and
Yeah,
ever. And you'll have periods where it's under really great control, and then you'll have flare-ups where it's like
yeah,
maybe not so controlled and you goes off the map and you have to suppress it down a little bit. But I think you're right. If we could only discover a cure for melasma, we would just literally be billionaires and never have to work again. It's like every woman's problem at some point in her life, whether it's
yeah,
pregnancy or hormones or menopause. It's
absolutely.
crazy.
Pigmentation is big.
Yeah, it's like, it's interesting. It's the evolutionary protection system of the face, but it's of the skin, but it's gone in overload. But I love your theory, or your idea of prevention, the three core principles that you mentioned: prevention, procedures, and then consistency. And
Mhm.
I think that that's something that all patients should do. So, um,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's so easy to just focus on the procedure component and, forget about the other two, which are equally, if not more important. And I think of prevention really as the foundation. And that, again, is kind of centered on nutrition, using, supplements, being smarter with supplements, taking those that really can help with, skin aging and anti-inflammation, adjusting hormones if needed, exercising, practicing mindfulness. All these things are just core to prevention. And that really sets you up for, longer term results for when you go and do the procedures, which is kind of the second aspect. So whereas prevention is the foundation, procedures kind of help reset the skin to get you back a few years. And there's so many different options now. I mean, we have over 30 lasers and devices in the office, so it's really great to be able to use a combination of things, and really tailor, treatment protocols so they best serve patients. We're not to use these to fix all problems. So it's really nice to kind of be able to pick and choose to thoughtfully come up with a treatment plan for patients. And then we continue with, consistency. So my office is definitely not a quick fix Botox pop-up, all about helping patients for the long term. And that means kind of doing smaller maintenance treatments, consistently revisiting, again, prevention, and trying to keep that skin younger and healthier over time. I think of, skincare and skin health as a journey. And we continue that journey into the future, and we make adjustments as the skin changes. But rather than thinking of it as, okay, I just need to tackle one problem or this problem or that problem, we try to look at it a bit more comprehensively, focused both on prevention, procedures, as well as kind of consistency afterwards.
Well, I thank you so much for all those really great tips on skincare. And with this being Skin Cancer Awareness Month, everyone should remember that sun gives you 90% of your skin aging changes. 90%, that's a lot. So
Yep.
the one thing you can literally do for yourself to age better is wear your sunscreen. And we never get tired of saying it, right? Isn't that right, Dr. Herrmann?
Absolutely. Wear your sunscreen, but also, take your nicotinamide because that helps with DNA repair. Use your DNA repair enzymes. Make sure you've got adequate nutrition because all of those things work, in conjunction to give you more protection and repair damage because sunscreen's not perfect. There's a lot of people who wear the sunscreen and they still get color or they get burned when they're outside. So kind of, trying to tackle it from all fronts gives you more protection, more repair, and hopefully healthier, younger skin going forward.
Yes, there you have it. So thanks so much for tuning in. And where can all of our listeners find you on your various handles?
Instagram at Dr. Jennifer Herrmann, and practice website is Rodeoderm, RODEODERM.com.
And then don't forget, guys, you can find me on my Instagram doing amazing things with people's faces at Beauty by Dr. K. And my website is the same, Beauty by Dr. K, DRKAY.com. And try my Ultimate SPF 50 tinted and mineral sunscreen. I love mineral sunscreens the best. And I know you probably do too, Jennifer. But that's it for now. Stay beautiful, stay sun safe, and find us back here the same time. If you haven't already ranked, rated, and reviewed the podcast, you can definitely do that on iTunes, and we'll send you a little free sample of some skincare. That's it for now, guys. Stay beautiful.